So the Trump administration decided they needed the National Guard to clear out peaceful protesters. And so the call went out to states, send us your troops. And some Republican governors apparently did. But they didn't just send troops. Along with the troops, National Guard units from other states brought weapons and ammunition. Tens of thousands of rifle and pistol rounds were stored in the D.C. Armory and partitioned in pallets labeled by their state of origin to be used on American citizens in case of emergency. And of course, in at least Louisville, they were used on American citizens. Now, thankfully, in D.C., it didn't come to the use of live ammunition to massacre peaceful protesters, but the plan was set up, ready to go, if they felt they needed to start firing on these protesters. They were ready with tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition.
There's some audio that Otto played when I was reading this article, and from the New York Times, Gibbons, Neff, and others, where it was someone affiliated with the National Guard organization who referred to these events within the space of 15 to 20 seconds as the Alamo, D-Day, and the Super Bowl. Just how horny they were for it. Just like, let's get in there. Oh. And then you are characterizing those defending Americans, the protesters, exercising their First Amendment rights as people trying to storm the Alamo. If they were storming the Alamo, I think they would have probably tried to get inside it ever. Mm-hmm. And those people that you went after in frickin' DC were just standing there, bud.
They were standing there. Some were singing.
And oh yeah, that's right.
Reports of a guitar.
Maybe they thought it was like the Alamo Draft House and there was a performance.
If you can go, it's great. I definitely recommend it. Yeah, and so, look, thankfully it didn't come to that. That's what we were worried of at the time, but the National Guard is still deployed in multiple cities, and so, God only knows. Trump's going to be giving that racial unity speech on Juneteenth in Tulsa.
Tulsa, where a major in the police department said that they should be killing more black people, mathematically speaking.
They ought to.
They ought to.
They ought
to kill more black people. Then said that Tamir Rice was an armed robber, and all other kinds of things.
And said that George Zimmerman was the prototypical case for what the left wants policing to look like.
Yeah,
so that's going to be something.
Also, and not to mention, like what they call the race riots, which really was just massacre. Mm-hmm. The massacre in Tulsa, like it
was a bombing and massacre. That's all it was.
So that's where he chose to have it.
Yeah,
he's choosing to have his Juneteenth emancipation speech about race relations in a place famous. I mean, not even famous enough relative to what happened there, but famous for a bunch of white people going in and killing a bunch of black people who had made it.
Yep.
Just because they'd done well for themselves.
Yeah.
That was what was so unacceptable. That's where Trump is choosing to have his race relations speech written by racist extremist Stephen Miller.
Yeah. The only question at this point, is it going to be like, are we going to be live tweeting it during the speech, reacting in real time to horrendous calls to further violence? Or will we find out that the iambic pentameter of the speech was designed to perfectly mimic a Hitler speech? Like, is it going to be the obvious stuff, or is it going to be, oh no, every sentence was 14 words coincidentally? One of those things.
Is it going to be shooting blank verse?
Exactly. I don't know, but it's going to be one of those two things. Stephen Miller is not going to rise to the, occasion on this thing. It's going to be explicit, or it's going to be a little bit between the lines, but it is going to be some scary stuff.
It will have some scary stuff in it, no doubt. But then my favorite thing about Stephen Miller's speech is he's also a bad writer. So I don't know if anyone watched that episode of Friends where Joey tries to give he tries to give his best man speech, and it's just like, and loving and caring and having and holding and loving while caring and having and holding. It's just such tripe, cliche, empty rhetoric nonsense that doesn't have anyone delivering it. Like Obama could give any speech and it would be inspiring. Trump doesn't have that skill. it will just read as the tripe it is written as.
Yeah, one final thing. I just want to quickly mention this about, because I mentioned that not only were people worried, obviously, but the violence that the National Guard was used, but people in the National Guard, I guess one spoke to Trump and said it was a walk in the park, I guess. But others are saying that they have significant issues with the way they're being used. They say that they're demoralized and exhausted. These are DC Guard members interviewed by the New York Times. More than 60% are people of color themselves. One soldier said he and some fellow troops were so ashamed in taking part against the protests that they've kept it from family members. They're not revealing what they were deployed to do. I have a feeling their family could probably figure it out. But
one guy said that he reported that he could see his cousin in the crowd and in the protest, and he has to do that. And there's one video that everybody should go watch. It's a guardsman in Long Beach, California, who is talking to protesters, and he's like, "Listen, you don't think that they come after me when I don't have this this uniform on? They do the same thing to me. We're your neighbors. We are people who are just trying." He's like, "I play junior college football, and this is how I can get by, is by joining the National Guard." And he's like, "I am with you. I'm here to protect you. And what sucks is that they're using me as a way to call the people I am rioters and violent Antifa."
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure many people saw the viral video of I believe it was a National Guardsman, but he was black, and as a chant was going on, someone zoomed in on his face, and he was mouthing along to the "I'm black and I'm proud." And it just kills you. I mean, that they're being deployed. And obviously, look, they could hypothetically just refuse to follow the orders and go immediately to jail. But that's what would happen. Anyway, so yeah, just a complete mess. All of it avoidable. None of this had to happen. Absolutely none of this. Donald Trump, again, lashed out emotionally because he's emotional and because he can't stop watching TV. Those are the sources of most of the problems in his life. For all that he's been given, all that the bad that happens to him is because he's a stupid, incurious, emotional person who never stops watching cable TV.
There's another video everyone should watch of Trump sitting there while his press sergeant at arms is like, "That's it, everybody, get out!" And you just hear her yell "Get out, get out, get out!" to clear everybody out of the room. And Trump's just sitting there like, "I don't think anything I'm doing is working. Not gonna stop doing it, but it's like a demoralized, sad, looking different Trump."
Good. Well, that makes me feel temporarily better.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.